Republican Senator Josh Hawley has announced he will be objecting to the Electoral College vote count on January 6th in Washington, D.C., giving us pretty close to clear confirmation that there will be a contested result, an objection in the joint session of Congress, and it likely will not lead to anything. In order for there to be a change, both chambers would have to agree. Now, there's also a lawsuit filed against other Republicans against Mike Pence, arguing that he has the right to choose which envelopes to open and count. And because Republican electoral candidates did cast procedural votes, he can choose to count them instead. Now, Hawley is saying that there are irregularities in certain states and they should be discussed and debated. As for this lawsuit, they're arguing that the state legislatures are the ones who've ultimately chosen this new slate, and Pence should actually count them. Well, the problem with that Mike Pence lawsuit part is that the alternate electors they claim are coming in are not certified by anybody. Certainly, there have been many state legislatures who have said these are the official electors, but it's not been through a legislative session. There's not been a majority of the state's legislature voting for these electors, and thus Mike Pence probably will do nothing. More importantly, however, it appears that Mike Pence has actually rejected the calls from Republicans to actually stand up and count votes for Donald Trump. My friends, based on what we are seeing with Trump's latest actions pertaining to, say, the omnibus bill, based on what we're seeing now with Mike Pence saying no to this lawsuit, even with the objection of Senator Hawley, I do not expect anything to change in the Electoral College. Now, it's really funny. I say that, and I know there's already people on the right saying, well, Tim makes bad predictions, therefore he's probably going to be wrong. And what happens when I'm right? The left will clearly ignore it as well, because I've been saying the entire time, I don't see Trump's legal challenges working as they've progressed, to be honest. And I've said that I believe 99.9% it is going to be a Biden presidency. Now, okay, maybe something happens and Kamala Harris becomes president. That's something many people have said, but I don't see this progressing at all. In fact, many other pundits have said Josh Hawley is certainly going to stand up for the millions of voters who demand there be an objection, but it's fruitless. It's an easy thing to do. Not the easiest, because he's certainly getting attacked. Hawley's getting ripped apart by many leftists and media for doing this. In fact, in what may be one of the weirdest bits of criticism, Walmart official Twitter account tweeted at Hawley calling him a sore loser. Yeah, okay, some social media intern forgot to switch their accounts, but that actually happened. I mean, the political tensions are real. So, will it go down in the joint session of Congress? This big battle to change the results? Probably not. But what about on the streets? You see, there's fears that there's going to be widespread violence on January 6th in Washington, D.C., and now 2 different venues have shut down, saying they will not be open on these days. Many people, even a former Trump administration official, says they fear there will be violence. Trump has called for people to show up. It's going to be wild, they say. And you know what? Probably will. It probably will get wild. But we'll see. We'll see. It's hard to know for sure. Maybe it's just going to be a peaceful rally and occupation. Or maybe when Josh Hawley goes in there and gives his objection and they debate, the debate comes back that Joe Biden's going to win, people snap off. Or more importantly, what happens if, John, on January 5th, the results come in? Democrats have won in Georgia and will now have control of all branches of government, assuming they pack the Supreme Court. And Trump supporters are geared up, ready to go in D.C. I mean, they're going to get really angry. It's hard to believe that Trump supporters would actually engage in this kind of behavior. I mean, if you read nothing but the mainstream media, you probably believe it. But Trump supporters don't go out and do this. I think they're going to rally, wave little American flags. And to be honest, I think that will mostly be the end of it. But who knows? Let's read the story and see why Josh Hawley is objecting. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate. If you'd like to support my work, there are many ways you can give. Got a P.O. box if you want to send me some stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this video. Helps grow the channel and, maybe gives a differing perspective from the mainstream media. Certainly not a staunchly conservative or liberal perspective, but I try to be rational and reasonable. So if you think I do a good job, sharing this video is the best way to help. But don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's read the story from NPR. GOP Senator Hawley will object to Electoral College certification. They say, Hawley said Wednesday he plans to object during the Electoral College certification process when Congress convenes next week, a move that ensures a delay in the final step to mark President-elect Joe Biden's election victory. I got to stop here and just point out the absurdity of how the media in this country works. They say that he's going to object to the certification process, but then they call Joe Biden president-elect. Then what is he objecting to if you're already calling him president-elect? You see, as most of you probably know, calling Joe Biden president-elect is more of a media tradition. It's not real. He's not legally the president-elect. We just kind of say it because we expect him to win because, every bit of the process has moved through, and now we're just basically going to rubber stamp the Electoral College vote count. There's a possibility that, I'll put it this way, let's say, 20 Democrat members of the House are all sick and they can't come and they can't vote. Okay, well then I guess maybe Trump could win when they all object and then make Trump the winner. But come on. Even Mitch McConnell's trying to stop this. You don't even have most Republicans. They got one Republican so far to commit to objection. I think it's going to be like 95 votes for Biden, rejecting the objections. It's not going to happen. They're going to say, a tweet from Josh Hawley, he says, millions of voters concerned about the election integrity deserve to be heard. I will object on January 6th on their behalf. In the tweet, he released a statement saying, Following both the 2004 and 2016 elections, Democrats in Congress objected during the certification of electoral votes in order to raise concerns about election integrity. They were praised by Democratic leadership and the media when they did, and they were entitled to do so. But now those of us concerned about the integrity of this election are entitled to do the same. Quote, I cannot vote to certify the Electoral College results on January 6th without raising the fact that some states, particularly Pennsylvania, failed to follow their own state election laws. And I cannot vote to certify without pointing out the unprecedented effort of mega corporations, including Facebook and Twitter, to interfere in this election in support of Joe Biden. At the very least, Congress should investigate allegations of voter fraud and adopt measures to secure the integrity of our elections. But Congress has so far failed to act. For these reasons, I will follow the same practice Democrat members of Congress have in years past and object during the certification process on January 6th to raise these critical issues. NPR goes on to say, Hawley is the first senator to announce publicly he will object to the results. That's significant because the rules dictate that for an objection to be considered, a member from the House and Senate must lodge an objection in writing. Rep. Mo Brooks of Alabama has already said he will object to the results as well. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had reportedly urged Republicans not to object during a joint session, as it puts GOP lawmakers in the uncomfortable position of supporting an objection that will likely fail and forces them to go on the record as to whether or not they concur with allegations of election fraud. Hawley's announcement paints a clearer picture of what the session on January 6th will look like. Biden will still be certified as the election's winner, but it's now certain there will be a debate and vote in both chambers. Here's what the process will look like. Both the House and Senate will retire to their own chambers and speak in favor or against the objection, according to Congressional Research Service. That period should not take longer than 2 hours. Each chamber then votes with a simple majority needed to uphold the objection. Both the Senate and House must agree to the objection for it to succeed, a requirement that makes any ultimate success on the objection unlikely, given the Democrats' majority in the House. This all stems from Trump's baseless claims about election fraud, as it became clear voters won't grant him a second term. Various lawsuits filed on behalf of his campaign and his allies in the states he did not win were thrown out in court. Trump's attorney general at the time of election, Bill Barr, has said the Justice Department found no evidence of widespread fraud in this election. Now, to clarify, Bill Barr said, of course, there's fraud. There's always fraud, but they had not seen fraud on a scale that would have changed the outcome of the election. I have personally corroborated some of this potentially illegal ballots. I want to be very precise with my language. Again, what I saw was not evidence enough that the election results were changed because of it. But it's enough for me to say, why aren't we getting a hard inquiry and investigation? I'll tell you what's really amazing to me in all of this. We're talking about who gets to be the president. I think it should be fine to spend a month or two doing hard audits and investigations. But it's really simple, my friends. We do not live in a fair world, and that's obvious to most people, anybody who's an adult, I would say. And everything is propaganda, manipulation, and influence. Lies and smears come out if you are not a part of the establishment elites. News organizations will push around fake news and lies, and that's the name of the game. It's not really about who got the most votes. It's not really about whether there was fraud. And I don't care if it's Trump or anyone else saying otherwise. Trump's concern is winning. I believe that if Trump won, Joe Biden would be saying the exact same things. And I've said the inverse. Hillary Clinton told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances, and Trump thought it was a good idea. Now they're outraged that Trump is doing certainly what they would have done. In fact, there were many people screaming at the Electoral College back in 2016 about how they shouldn't be voting for Trump. We are now getting the inverse. But I think the important thing to point out is we do have evidence of fraud. It has been shown. There is circumstantial evidence. There is data, and there is legitimate hard evidence. Now, why is it that before we say anything, any of it is proof, we say there's evidence, signs or indications something may have occurred? That's fine. The left immediately says, no, ignore it. It didn't happen. You're crazy. The right says it did. You see the problem? The left will never concede. So long as they control institutions of power, they will use that power to prevent any transparency into their side. I certainly think the same would be true for Republicans. The Republican Party is crony establishment elite trash as well. Trump wants to win. Trump will fight with every ounce of his being to win. Now, I'll tell you where things start getting spicy and scary. There's apparently news that a new probe or an ongoing criminal probe into Trump is ramping up once again. If Trump has nothing left to lose and there's a real risk he'll go to prison, why wouldn't Trump take some kind of dramatic action? I think he absolutely might. But it rests upon whether or not supporters would actually come out for him. Now, as for whether Mike Pence and Trump will actually take any actions, or more specifically Mike Pence, I just don't see it. Politico reports Pence declined to back Gohmert-led effort to upend elections, lawyers indicate. Rep. Louis Gohmert is pressing to throw out long-established procedures so that the president will win another term. I'm sorry. At this point, with Gohmert and other Republicans challenging the constitutionality of an 1887 law, it's a law that's been in place since 1887. Now it's being challenged. Clearly, the goal here is Trump must win by any means necessary. And I don't fault anybody for doing whatever they can to win. The challenge arises when the system breaks down, when you can't trust one side or the other, or you just know everyone's fighting as hard as possible for power. And then what happens is you choose who you trust. What information do you believe? I mean, look at this. I'm reading Politico and NPR, and we just choose to accept it as fact right now. Well, I'll tell you. I've looked into, I do basic fact checking and I avoid stories when I think they're buck. But Politico is not a good source. Why bother using them? The best source I could find, the original report, I guess. But Politico both simultaneously reported that Ukrainians did interfere in the election in 2016 to help Hillary. And then later, a different reporter at Politico reported that it didn't happen. And guess what? Whichever one you pick, you will get criticized for. Now, the real problem is the institutions and the establishment controlled by the establishment left. And they have allies in the progressive left who kind of just go along with what they say. Fake progressive pundits who do everything they can to claim to be progressives, but actually just support the machine. The establishment leans left and progressives will take what they can get and they tend to support it. So when they put out fake news, when they lie, that's allowed. When they push insane conspiracy theories for years, that's allowed. But heaven forbid you read one of their own stories that they later on say was wrong. How about TechCrunch, which published that hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin was showing promising results in tests to help with COVID? When Trump repeated it, instantly, it was a conspiracy theory. And Trump was acting in a dangerous way. That's the name of the game. They say it's the Rep. Louis Gohmert and Arizona's 11 Republican electors have revealed Tuesday that Vice President Mike Pence declined to sign onto their plan to upend Congress's certification of President-elect Joe Biden's victory. It's the first indication that Pence is resisting some of the most extreme calls to reverse the presidential election results, thus relying on his role as the presiding officer on January 6th when Congress meets to finalize Biden's win. Gohmert and the Arizona electors sued Pence this week to throw out the procedures that Congress had relied upon since 1889 to count electoral votes. Instead, he said, Pence has the unilateral authority to determine which electors should be voted upon by Congress, raising the prospect that Pence would simply override the choices made by voters in states like Arizona and Pennsylvania that Biden won to introduce Donald Trump's electors instead. You want to know why I say that's ridiculous? The idea that the sitting vice president who's running for re-election could just choose to vote for himself, I'm sorry, that makes absolutely no sense. If you want to raise objections because there's impropriety or irregularities in these states, then I agree with you, and I think you have your constitutional right to do it. In Iowa, a Democrat is challenging the results. It's her right to do it. But the Democrats are claiming it's wrong for Trump to do it. Well, that's hypocrisy. Certainly, if Trump can do it, the Democrats can do it. That's only fair, right? We are not playing fair. The game isn't fair, and the rules are being bent by those who seek power. In the end, you just have to choose which conqueror you would prefer to live under. Now, let me tell you about my real fears for January 6th. It has nothing to do with Mike Pence. It has nothing to do with Josh Hawley. It has a lot more to do with the insanity that is gripping this nation. Mediaite reports, Walmart Twitter account goes rogue. Supermarket calls Josh Hawley a sore loser for Electoral College objection. Tweeting out, go ahead, get your 2-hour debate, sore loser. Okay, most of us know what this is. The employee working at Walmart or whoever managed their social media forgot to switch accounts. It's not really Walmart making this declaration, but it is a Walmart employee who's in control of digital marketing. There was a study done a couple of years ago that shows digital marketing firms overlap with resistance Twitter. That's why you see all of this advertising tends to be leftist. People in this country are hyper polarized to such an insane degree. The person who is tweeting for Walmart's PR department is yelling at Josh Hawley. And now you see it. Now you hear it. Ex-Pence aide turned Trump critic, very concerned about January 6th violence. They say a former aide to Vice President Pence, who has since become a vocal critic of the Trump administration, warned Monday that she feared violence could erupt in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, when Congress will formally certify President-elect Joe Biden's Electoral College victory. Quote, I'm actually very concerned that there will be violence on January 6th because the president himself is encouraging it, Olivia Troy said in an appearance on MSNBC's Deadline. Well, this is the dirty game they play. Trump said, be there, it will be wild. Trump didn't say show up and do anything violent. And even Alex Jones called for a peaceful protest and protest occupation, clearly nonviolent civil disobedience. But this individual isn't saying these things on TV because they want you to be informed. They're saying it for political points. They're saying it. They say the lie. They repeat the lie. They seed the lie. And it works. They control the institution. So what does it matter what they think and what you think? This is where things truly start getting really crazy. I mean, they can just say anything they want. Trump encourages violence. And now what we're going to get, numerous news outlets are all going to start repeating the same thing over and over again. And they'll just say it's true. And then Wikipedia will enter into the record Donald Trump encouraged violence on January 6th, which he didn't do. But when they say that, what happens? Leftists hear it. And then they start encouraging violence. And then people on the right react. And the Proud Boys show up and they fight back. So yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it wasn't just this individual. MSNBC has another op-ed from Steve Bannon, not Steve Bannon, Bannon. Trump's desire for wild protest sparks fear among U.S. officials. One observer noted that Trump will fail in Congress, but the greater danger is on the streets where pro-Trump forces are already threatening chaos. They say it was 9 days ago when Trump announced via Twitter there would be a wild protest in the nation's capital on January 6th. They say, and what, pray tell, does Trump expect to happen on January 6th? As lawmakers certify his successor's victory? He hasn't said. Wait a minute. He hasn't said. But I thought they said that he was encouraging violence. Oh, Trump didn't actually say anything other than be there, it'll be wild. They go on to say, Washington Post's David Ignatius noted that even some Republican officials are concerned the outgoing president may try to overstep the constitutional limits on his power. They say Trump's last-ditch campaign will almost certainly fail in Congress. The greater danger is on the streets, where pro-Trump forces are already threatening chaos. Government officials fear that if violence spreads, Trump could invoke the Insurrection Act to mobilize the military. Then Trump might use military capabilities to rerun the November 3rd election in swing states, as suggested by Michael Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor. Trump could take military capabilities and he could place them in those states and basically rerun an election, Flynn told Newsmax in a December 17th interview. I don't believe these people. They're conspiracy crazies. I just don't see anything like this happening. But I will tell you this. You know, looking at how the media has handled everything, looking at how people on the right feel, the fracture is here. It's really funny. The left would like to criticize me for saying that New York State violating the Constitution, shutting down small businesses, and barring people from practicing their First Amendment rights, and Second Amendment rights for that matter, while putting up checkpoints does not constitute a pseudo-secession. I said that New York might as well have seceded from the Union by doing all of these things, and that Trump is doing nothing to enforce the Constitution in any of these states. Why? Well, because Trump is not the despot they claimed he was. So now we have states like New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, clearly in defiance of the U.S. Constitution. Many of these governors put sick people, COVID patients, into nursing homes, killing the elderly. And nothing is done to ensure justice or to enforce the Constitution. Where in the Constitution does it say that the governor has the authority to put ill people in nursing homes? And where is anyone to say that crossed the line? Well, ProPublica did, and they're a fairly left-leaning organization. But tribalism is so intense in this country that it doesn't matter, that people will actually defend governors shutting down churches, but allowing pro-Biden individuals to jump around in the streets and drink champagne, take their masks off. They'll defend it. When you see that people are marching in the streets for racial justice, and the only excuse they can muster up is, yeah, well, racism is bad. When you see people dancing around because Joe Biden was declared the victor and drinking champagne, and they say, yeah, well, that's fine. But then they tell you can't go to church. You as an individual can't go to a church of, say, 50 people. Clearly, they are not telling you the truth. They are not operating in good faith. And their only goal with the lies and the media smears is to destroy you. I guess we're in the counting heads phase, is one way to put it. The goal from the mainstream media is to beat enough people into submission to just accept the establishment elites and their control over you. People on the right are resisting because, well, they don't like that. And they certainly, many individuals on the right want their power as well and don't want to live under the despotic lunacy of many of these lying media elites and political elites in the political establishment. For too long, the American people have ignored what's been going on. And what we see in the media with their lies and manipulation and smears, it's been allowed to carry on because the American people haven't been paying attention. What I find truly interesting right now is that, you have the Arizona GOP actually signaling that the election was taken from Bernie Sanders. But many in the left still criticize and attack Trump supporters and the right. The most powerful thing this country could actually see is if the populists stopped fighting each other and started fighting the establishment. But then you can see where the high-profile fake progressives come in, siding with the establishment while pretending to be progressive, saying, don't challenge Nancy Pelosi. You've got many progressives, people like Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski, saying, force a vote on Medicare for all. I support that. 100% I do. I support the demands of the progressives and the leftists who want the Democrats to vote for Medicare for all. Why is it then that the establishment progressives, those in Congress, and the high-profile YouTubers and personalities who claim to be progressives are rejecting the will of the populist left? Doesn't quite make sense, does it? Because the real issue is you have forces that pretend to be on the right and the left, and their real goal is to make sure we don't realize we actually have more in common with each other as populists and liberty-minded individuals than any of us have with the establishment. But for some reason, there's money to be made. I wonder why. Among people to just support the likes of Joe Biden and push back Bernie or Trump. I'll tell you what I find also interesting is that Bernie Sanders is easily supported because the establishment will never let him in, and he's not strong enough to get in. Trump is the insurgent who broke down the door, and the establishment Republicans hate his guts. I wonder what would happen on January 6th if the Proud Boys said our beef is not with Antifa. I wonder what would happen on January 6th if Antifa said our beef is not with the Proud Boys. And both groups of supposed populists said our beef is with the establishment. I wonder then who really is being honest about being a populist. What's the real issue here? Why do the Proud Boys got to go to major urban centers for their protests, right? Go to Portland. What if they just went and did their thing in the middle of nowhere? People agreed with them. Same thing with Antifa. Why should I care at this point if Antifa wants to set up an autonomous zone in Portland? Well, I moved out of the cities. I'm done playing these games. If voting and fighting for these changes isn't going to work because the people who live there are entrenched in tribalism and just want to win, well, then at a certain point, I say, you do your thing, I'll do mine. Look, I still live in this country and I believe in fighting for it. I believe in, nonviolent civil disobedience, voting for people that you believe will fight for your cause. But for the most part, we haven't seen any of that in a long time. You can keep fighting, you can make demands, or I look at it this way. If Antifa wants to protest in their cities and have their way, well, then by all means, let them. Why should we enact the rules of Portland on rural and suburban Oregon? If the red part of Oregon doesn't want to live under the laws of the city, then why does it have to be that way? How about we just agree to disagree and we can stay as one great nation and you just do your thing? And if you don't want guns, then don't have your guns in your city and then everyone else can have their guns. It's interesting and complicated. And there are people in New York City who assert their constitutional right to say bear arms, but they lose the fight every step of the way. Where is anyone to enforce the Constitution? Because I'll tell you that one of the tricks they've done, particularly with, say, like with marijuana, was that they said, okay, we can't ban it, but you need to pay it. You need to buy a stamp to be able to buy it. But then no one sells the stamps. That's what they do in many states. They say, we're not going to infringe on your right to own a weapon, but you need special permits, training, and licensing that we don't give out. But if you don't get it, you can't buy it. They do that in states like New Jersey. They say, no, you can have a weapon. Yeah, you just got to get this form. And then when you try to get it, they roadblock you, so you can't. But they did. It's still legal to own the weapon, they say, with the right permit that you can't get. That's the game. We're at a point now where people are talking about this peaceful divorce. It's been talked about for quite some time. Why should I argue with the likes of a progressive YouTuber who wants universal health care? How about they just enact it in their state? Why is that so hard? You look, if Antifa wants to occupy their city, I'm done arguing against it. The cops in these cities are destroying the small businesses. And at a certain point, everything's been wiped out. And you know what? It is bad, that these bad people get away with doing bad things. But what do we do when most of the people who live there vote for this and want it? That's the problem. So do you want to live under the boot of authoritarians, constantly begging the other people under the boot to stand up and push back? Or do you eventually say, I am not in the majority opinion here. I'll go somewhere else and live as I choose much more freely. And that could be outside the U.S. or it could be in the U.S. So I put it this way. On January 6th, I don't understand why the left and the right would even be bothering fighting each other. Why is the left going to defend Joe Biden? That makes no sense to me. Why is the right going to go pick a fight with people who also don't like the government? And if Trump is out, it sounds like the enemy of my enemy is my friend is starting to look really good to a lot of people. I hope that come January 6th, it's peaceful. People get their point across. Maybe they can enact some political change through nonviolent civil disobedience. And I hope that's the way it goes. My fear, however, is that I'm hearing crazy stuff and the left is going to show up and there's probably going to be street battles. And once again, the left and the right will be fighting each other instead of, the boot that's crushing them. That's probably what's going to happen. But I don't know, man. A couple bars have already shut down. We've had the Hotel Harrington. We've had Harry's Bar. So now we have got two venues that have shut down. And it seems like the only thing I can really predict is street fights. But predictions are worthless. I don't think anybody should be coming to me to figure out what's going to happen in the future. I'll tell you this. Many of the things I've predicted have absolutely been correct, and the left doesn't want to admit it. They'll pull select clips because, of course, no one bats a perfect. I don't know. Bats. What is it? 100 or whatever? Is that how you say it? Not everybody always bowls a perfect game, and there are a lot of things that I've pointed out over the past couple of years that have absolutely come true. A couple of years ago, I said the street fights we're seeing will escalate and politically. it will reach the top levels of government. And it did. We now have tribalism completely affecting our government. If you think it's bad now, like Josh Hawley objecting, what do you think is going to happen in 2 or 4 years? Do you think people will simmer down and calm down? I don't think so, unless some dramatic changes happen. I'll tell you one thing. If Section 230 is repealed, then yeah, you will get the wool pulled back over your eyes, and then we'll get a woke, new, beautiful, great reset future. There will be pockets of insurgency that'll get wiped out, and no one will have any idea what's going on. And that's where we're headed. And that's thanks to Donald Trump, to be completely honest. Mitch McConnell's the one proposing repealing 230. And I'm sure the Democrats are pretending like they're upset about it, but they're probably stoked about it. They're probably super excited. It'll give all of these platforms so much more control to shut out whoever they don't want. Conservatives are already saying they don't care, though. They've already been shut out. So shut everybody out, right? Fine. So be it. Watch the system crumble. I can't tell you what'll happen. Predictions are meaningless. Here's the information as it stands. I wonder what's going to happen. Comment below, let me know what you think. Leave a good review on the podcast. Thanks for hanging out. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastIRL. We will be live talking about a lot of this stuff and philosophy and aliens and whatever else. So thanks for hanging out, everybody. And I will see you all tonight at 8 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastIRL. Until then, adios.